Got it. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, everyone, for being here. So I'm gonna kickstart this. As in the second part of the meeting, I'm gonna be moving around, so Colomb will be more present than me. So thank you, John, for the introduction. I think you explained very well what we do. Just to add a bit of flavor to the more formal introduction, Colomb and I have been doing this for 5 years. Many of you have been doing this for way longer time. So we're very happy if in this call you really open your hearts and mind and help us go deeper and deeper into the beautiful topic we're discussing today. As John mentioned, our expertise lies in bringing young people or younger folks into the conversation about transnationalism and activism linked to these topics. And this is how in the last 2 or 3 years, we have devoted lots of our time by mobilizing people on different topics, from climate change to democracy to women's rights. And this is how we ended up, as many of you also ended up, understanding that the solution to many of the issues that we're facing as a global community is some kind of democratic global governance. And I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the World Federalist exists since the 40s. So it's been a long battle, a long uphill battle. And what we're trying to bring into this conversation is kind of the voice of a new generation of people that hopefully can help us advance at least a tiny bit in this struggle. Basically, now bringing the focus to the consultations at hand, what we realized was last summer, basically, we had a General Assembly in Geneva with our members from a bit all over the planet. We have a membership of around 22,000 people. Of course, not all active, a subset is active from 134 countries. And we came together with a subset of them where a few hundred people discussing. And what we came up, basically the idea that we had was, okay, we cannot keep on trying to fight all these fights on different fronts. We also had some successes. So I'm later, if you're interested, we can dwell into the successful campaigns we worked upon. But it was clear that, and I think it's clear for everyone, that we need something more than just fighting a battle at a time. And so our membership came up with the idea of, came up with the idea, or more than idea, came up with the wish to do something along the lines of defining a global, understanding how democratic global governance could look like in 2023 and later, farther in the future. And obviously, we were already in contact with the World Federalist Movement and other organizations that are working on this. And we thought that what we could bring to the table was not only running, this kind of online conversation with people that are already very much into the topic, but try to bring this topic a bit outside of the classic rooms where we normally problem solve these topics. And so we decided to run global consultations on this topic on the ground across the planet. So obviously we also have a software that later we can cover some of the topics that are being discussed in the software. So we allow for online conversations, but I think the unique element of what we are doing is actually bringing the conversation to the grassroots across the planet in rooms that span from 100 to 10 people. And Colomb will tell you way more about where we already had some successes, for example, in Taiwan, in Korea, and now we have some organizing in Nairobi, in Spain. And actually making it real, making it local, it's very, very interesting. Like, we got very interesting perspective, participation from strata of the population that would normally be, I'm not even sure against, but more like completely unaware of this kind of conversation. And it has led to some surprising initial results that we would like to discuss with you today. But I spoke enough, so I'm gonna now hand the mic to Colomb for to basically tell you what we did in the first 3 months and take it from there. Sorry for the long intro.
Hi, everyone. Just a couple of words to add. And I think one of our unique methodologies is because we have members all over the world that experience very different local realities and successes as well when it comes to democracy. And our consultations are not just about imagining what a world government could look like, but about thinking about the role of democracy in this. And I know, for example, a lot of organizations have argued already with very detailed and very thought through papers about the role of a UN parliament and other things like this. And we are also looking at what should democracy look like in today's age, meaning a lot of people across the world are very disengaged, as well as no longer big believers in democracy, not only because they believe, not just because they might believe in something else like authoritarianism, but also because democracy no longer works in a lot of places as it stands. Voting once every 5 years no longer works for a lot of people. And there are a lot of innovation when it comes to this. So as Andrea mentioned, we started our consultations in Taiwan. Taiwan is very strong when it comes to digital democracy, involving people online on a regular basis in coming up with good solutions to urgent problems. And so we thought during our consultations, let's look both at global governance and let's learn from one another when it comes to democratic innovation so that we can make this global governance more democratic, stronger, and more innovative on the long term so that it appeals to more people and can actually deal more with their everyday problems. So it's a big, big task. As Andrea mentioned, we are doing both on-the-ground meetings. We launched those consultations in Taiwan, and we started with the topic of disinformation and misinformation, because it's what our members on the ground wanted to do, and considering the CCP's threats on the country and so on. And we came up with interesting best practices that we've been sharing. And we are now organizing a lot of our events with volunteers. In the upcoming ones will be Kenya, Colombia, India, Spain, and slowly but surely it's expanding. And this is coupled at the same time, and I can share my screen and show you later, with, as Andrea mentioned, the software we are using that is actually an open source software that was developed by the city of Madrid. And we are adapting it. So we haven't done a big launch so far because we are still dealing with a lot of tech issues since we're a volunteer-based organization. But basically it enables people to propose solutions, debate ideas. So we'll share some of the topics we're debating right now. Then make collaborative proposals, so detail them down, try to understand how to gamify consensus, right? Like by making a very detailed proposal, they'll be able to actually try to convince others to come on their side. And at the end of the process, we'll vote on different proposals on what type of governance should exist, what democracy should look like within this proposal. And so obviously I can go on speaking about this forever. I'll just end, and then I'm super happy to open it up to a conversation with a few examples of what is being debated right now. And I saw that we have Philip as well in this call, who's our policy lead, actually. So he might even be better placed to answer some of the questions than I am. But one of the topics we, for example, discussing is the role of a fourth branch of government in democracies. So a think tank in South Korea is deep diving into the idea of changing Congress or the Senate, depending on the system, into a chamber by sortition, where citizens are directly sorted, taken, put in there for a certain amount of time and act as a counterweight to politicians. And so this is being researched and thought as a way of strengthening democracy and representation. So this is something we're discussing in our consultations. How would this apply at the global level? How would you make it representative and so on? Another topic we're talking about is basic needs. The fact that for any world government to be relevant to everyday's problem, it should first deal with very basic needs, from education to food security and so on, because otherwise it feels too distant. That's a proposal from one of our members from the US, who's explaining that for her, sorry? I'm hearing some noises, but anyhow, for her, it might be fundamental to start with this instead of very detailed concepts that just don't apply to her life. And we have a lot of other examples that I'm happy to deep dive on, but I wanted to kind of take a break and leave room for questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrea and Colomb. I'd just like to kick off with one question, which is very specifically, what can we do to help you? Are there any particular countries you're looking for help in? And also, obviously, we'll send this out electronically to our members, but how can we participate in the consultation that you're carrying out?
I'm very happy to answer these two very good questions. So first of all, how can you help? I mean, I know you all have a lot of expertise on the topic, and while some in a certain way we can bring more the youthful energy to the conversation, it's very important to actually have expertise and also like avoid to the same conversation that already happened in other forum again and again in the same place. So I really invite whoever has the time and the willingness to do so to contribute online, or if there is an event near them, for example, in the countries I mentioned before, and then I'm gonna go over the schedule again, to contribute, because I think that there have been a lot of consultation in the past. For example, we spoke with Andreas Bummel, that many of you know. He mentioned other consultation that have gone through. So I think it's important to avoid to repeat the same thing over and over again, and actually try to build on what has been done already. And I'm going to answer also the question on how to contribute. I mean, we have a software. Basically, if you go on our website, and I know Colombi, if you already shared,
I just shared it.
Chat. Fantastic. So that link enables for the online consultations. The software has been recently updated because we crashed it. I mean, we had to move some comments from one platform to the other. So, but now it works well. So there you can contribute very well. And yeah, I think that's the best way. Colomb, do you have anything to add?
Yes, we also are hosting a lot of, we're going to be hosting a lot of on-the-ground events with partner organizations. So we don't do it alone necessarily. So if you have an organization in any place on earth where you'd like to host some of those discussions, we have a methodology we developed, and are very happy to help in doing such an event and so on.
Thank you very much. We have representatives here from quite a wide array of places around the earth, so hopefully you'll get some response to that. So from my perspective, this is a very exciting initiative. As I mentioned at the outset, you're a different, younger, more energetic demographic than a lot of the old world federalist movement, although we have our youth movement as well. So personally, I'm really happy to be hosting you here. I'm very excited by this process. And with that, I will open this up to the floor for any questions or comments. And if you could raise your electronic hand, it makes it easier to manage.
While we wait for contributions, because maybe some people have to think about it 1 second, I wanted to just add a very interesting anecdote of our first consultation in Taipei. Colomb mentioned it briefly. Basically, we wanted to kick off this exercise in Taipei because obviously of the significance of the country in terms of the struggle for democracy and being like an argent to authoritarianism and so on and so forth. And we managed to gather a room of, I think, 90 to 100 people, thanks to the help of a partner organization, a media group that we work with there. There's basically a youth activist media group. And it was extremely interesting. Maybe it's something that, I don't know if it was already debated in the World Federalist Movement space of how an hypothetical world global democratic governance would deal with the issue of misinformation and disinformation. Because obviously, unless the whole world would be suddenly democratic and very liberal, there would probably be some powers that would be either against or trying to sabotage from inside such a system, a bit like it happens in parts of the Hungarian country within the European Union, for example. And it was a very strong debate because obviously Taiwan and Taipei is at the forefront of the debate of the as we said before, the democratic struggle, and China consistently try to infiltrate the media space of Taiwan with fake news and other things to weaken their democratic situation. I won't dwell further on that because the many hands have been raised. Colomb shared the summary of the consultations there, but I think it was a very interesting take and something that perhaps is not the mainstream conversation about democratic global governance. But now, hands to John. I know you're going to moderate the questions as well.
Thank you, Andrea. That's fantastic. So I'm going to ask people to keep their contributions to like a minute or two, be brief, because obviously there's quite a few hands up and we are strictly time limited on the call. So with that said, Keith.
Thank you very much. First of all, I do want to congratulate you on this presentation. I think it's really excellent and extremely timely. Colombe said something very interesting about democracy being in crisis. And I just wondered for reactions about seeing really two crises that present democracies at the present time. One is from within, where electors have become frankly apathetic or complacent about their system of governance, and maybe as a result of the influence of digital communications and such like, have resorted more to instant reactions through digital media rather than seeking to go through representative democracy. And representative democracy, I think, is under a threat from those internal issues. But of course, the other way that democracies, there's some interruption somewhere. The other way democracies are under threat, and it was interesting that you went to Taiwan, is from external factors, where, you know, as we see patently and viciously and very unfortunately in Ukraine, a country being threatened by a neighbor which claims to be a democracy, but frankly is not. And so you've got those two pressures, internal and external, where democracies feel under threat. I just wondered what the views were about how there may be a renewal of democracy, because if you look at for example, the statistics now, sadly, we have fewer democracies in the world than there were 10 years ago. And so on that basis, one could say that actually democracies are diminishing rather than being enhanced.
Okay, thank you very much. Something I forgot to ask, could you please, because Andrea and Colombe won't know who we all are, could you just very, very briefly introduce yourself so they know who you are?
Yes, thank you. I'm Keith Best. I was chair of the executive committee of the World Federalist Movement for very many years prior to John taking over, and during its golden days when we had Bill Pace as our executive secretary general, who of course created the Coalition for the International Criminal Court, which led almost directly to the formation of the Criminal Court.
Thank you very much. So I find it very difficult to follow multiple questions and answers. So if I may, Colombe and Andrea, I'll just
I can answer this as well, because I'll forget otherwise. Thanks so much, Keith. So what I can do is give you my point of view based on the discussions I've had with people that participated in the consultations. But again, that doesn't mean that it will be the results of the consultations, just because we'll vote on them, right? Let me start with your first point on democracy being in crisis from within. Until here, I agree, and then I completely disagree. So I agree that it's in crisis. Rights, you know, in many places are going back and so on and so forth. I don't think it's because voters are complacent. I don't think it's because of social media or online tools. I don't think that it's because we are somehow less interested. I think it's simply because the current system no longer works for most people. If you look at the state of democracy, I co-founded a political party for this very reason. I was not represented. I was young. I'm a woman. In my country, it was very rare to see people like me. I was less interested in democracy than ever at this stage. I don't think democracy is in crisis from within because we're complacent. I think democracy is in crisis from within because it does not work as it stands, because it's a very old concept that needs to be innovated, because citizens should have a say way more often than every 5 years, because we should be able to vote on budgets, because we should be able to participate on pieces of legislation that concern us, because there should be way greater transparency and accountability than there currently is. And I think unless we deal with all of those different elements, there's no way that democracy will ever truly thrive. I hope it will forever survive in whatever state it is in today. And I deeply love democracy. I think it's the best system we've ever managed to come up with. And I think it's completely inadequate and that people feel it from within. I think unless we actually manage to ask ourselves questions, okay, we have those wonderful tools that are digital. Some of them have caused harm in the past. Some social media have caused harm, for example, but those are just tools. So unless we manage to actually use them for the good of democracy, to involve more people, to make more voices heard, to think in new ways about what democracy currently means, how does it best serve the people? How do we ensure that it's not an oligarchy from within, where the same power?
Hands up to answer. It's about reinventing the United Nations.
Reinventing.
So, and so unless we manage to do this, I don't see democracy not backtracking further. And I think it will be its own worst enemy. So I think that's one of the elements we're trying to tackle through the consultations, for example, is understanding, okay, so if people no longer trust their institutions, their governments, what can we do to change this? And what can we learn from different local realities? A lot of localities actually are innovating more than countries on this, on how to make participatory democracy, for example, the norm. And so that's on the one point. I think democracy from within needs to be influenced. And on the outside, I see John raising his hand, so I'll cut it super short. And yes, democracy is on the threat from outside as well. I think here, our idea is through a global democratic governance by joining forces, by coming together as one with the same very basic principle of democracy, we can stand stronger against authoritarian threats. I'll just close with, for example, the EU managed in a way to give this idea that by standing together, more countries will want to adopt certain norms to be able to join. So my idea is if we manage to do the same at the global level, it's a way of standing stronger. But I spoke too much, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Not at all talking about. I mean, it's a high quality problem. We have 7 hands up and we have a strict time limit. So just with that reminder to be brief, and also Fernando, if you could please introduce yourself. Over to you.
Hi, everybody, here from Buenos Aires. Well, happy to see many old fellows, not just from the World Federalist Movement, but also from other organizations. And congratulations to the Atlas organization for this initiative. Well, I would try to be very brief. Globalization has existed from a long time ago. The characteristic of this period is that what predominates at the global level finishes for predominating inside all the countries, all the continents, etc. And if we don't have, therefore, if we don't have democracy at the global level, democracy will be in crisis at the national and regional level for a long, long time. This is not new. This is very clear. This was very clear at the beginning of the past century in Europe. Without some kind of federalism and democracy at the regional level, the building of democracies inside countries was impossible. This is Spinelli, and this is very clear now at the global level too. So, but the problem is we missed an opportunity. We had an interesting opportunity with the Berlin Wall fell, and there was an open window, and we were able to do some things like International Criminal Court, etc., but we had no substantial steps forward. The democratization and federalization of the world at the United Nations and so on. So now we are in crisis. From the Twin Towers attack and the 2008
time, Fernando, not too long.
Yeah. Well, and so what I mean, there is a new, very difficult moment in which we should keep our long-term goal, but recognize at the same time that there is an increasing division in the world, a new Berlin Wall, let's call, with democratic countries in one side and autocracies on the other side, meaning China and Russia, Iran and Cuba and Venezuela and so on. I don't want to discuss who are in this line and who are in the other lines, but this, I think this is a fact. And Taiwan is a very important part because it's a point of crisis. In this, I am going to make a concrete proposal to Atlas. We are working closely with the Taiwan embassy. I was there 2 days ago. I know very well the old ambassador and the new ambassador. We have and we are working for a while. We have been working about having some kind of seminar or symposium at Taipei to discuss this, to speak about the globalization of democracy, both at the global level and the regional and the national level. And we are very open to close together with you. There are foundations and contacts we have. We can share and we can organize something. I think that will be a good symbol for the world, a meeting about the democratization of globalization in Taiwan, in order to make clear which are the values we are linked to. That's
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fernando. So, Colom and Andrea, if you want to obviously follow up on some of these ideas, you can get in touch with Amy to get contact details of everyone who's on the call, and we have a recording. Turn it over for a response if you'd like to respond.
I think Andrea is from his phone. I don't know if you want to respond to this one.
I can respond very briefly in the interest of time. Fernando, great idea. I think this is exactly the reason why we're doing this event. And we also worked with Taipei, the representation in London 1 year ago. And we have very good contacts in the digital ministry in Taiwan. That's why we also went there. So 100% great idea. Let's make it happen. So when I get in touch with you after the event, if you want to get your contact.
I just messaged you on Zoom about it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Atlas. Thank you, Fernando. That's wonderful. Lucy, if you could start with an introduction and keep it brief, please.
Of course. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm joining you from the Swiss mountains, as you can see. So I'm co-founder of an organization called GLOCO, which is a global community, and our objective is actually to introduce global direct democracy. So direct democracy on a global level. So there's obviously a lot of overlap, I think, with the objectives that Atlas has. And I think it would be really interesting to join forces on some of the issues here. And one problem that I see is that, when it comes to global democracy, there are actually a lot of players and a lot of actors and a lot of organizations and a lot of great ideas. I think the problems are also, that have been identified are very clear. And actually, Colombe, I thought that was an excellent response that you gave there, summing up some of the key issues and challenges and opportunities as well. So, I think I'm speaking in the name of my organization if I say we would be really interested in seeing how we can take some of these issues forward, and perhaps co-hosting some consultations or events and I'd be really happy if you'd reach out to us, or we can reach out to you if you tell us who to contact. Thank you very much.
If I may, thank you very much. I also just, I'll send my email in general in the chats so you can reach out. But I think, for example, direct democracy, from learning from the lessons of the local level and seeing how it could apply at the global level, is super interesting. I think there's so much that has been done on different types of democracy across the world. If only we could actually, put it together, show the benefits, show how it works, show what topic it worked on best and so on, and manage to learn from it. I think it would draw a lot of attention to world federalism from different types of people that are not already involved in the discourse. So I love it, and I'll check out the work of your organization.
Thank you, Colombe.
Sounds like someone else is in the background. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Bob Flax. I'm the Executive Director of Citizens for Global Solutions in the United States. I first want to congratulate the two of you for, again, getting these conversations outside of the usual circles, that it's critical for what we want to accomplish. And I have kind of a combined question and comment. If you look at the past notions of what a global democracy would look like, there's probably about a half a dozen or so elements that have gotten universal, consensus or close to it. Things like having a world things like having a world constitution, or having individual accountability, arresting dictators rather than bombing entire countries. There are about a half a dozen elements that seem to have a lot of consensus around them. But then if you look now, you see, because of technology, there are all these new possibilities like, direct democracy, liquid democracy, global referendums, things that couldn't be imagined years ago. And then there are whole new structures like sociocracy and things like that of ways to have consensus among very large groups. So for me, the question is, and this is the question I'll also ask you, is how do you, what's the process to look at what the thinking has been in the past and salvage kind of the best of that thinking, and at the same time look at the new possibilities and new opportunities and meld those together? What is necessary to make that happen? So that's a question I've been sitting with, and I'll throw it over to you to hear your thinking on it. Thank you.
I'll take this one. Yeah, sorry, I was just in unmuting. So thank you for the excellent question. I think that, I can see two answers that pop up in my brain. The first one is obviously what we're doing right now. So there is a lot of human connection to be established outside maybe of the organizations that we already know, where there are people doing incredible things that could contribute a lot to this conversation and learn a lot from what has already been discovered in this space. So I think that human connection is a very important thing, and we see it right now, right here. And I think that we could amplify this way more with many more meetings about vertical topics, vertical integrations around all the topics that we've mentioned: liquid democracy, direct democracy, all the wealth of knowledge around democracy. They would be very useful for us as newcomers in the space, and hopefully bring some new angles to see issues and to explore possibilities for people that way more experience than us in this space. So I think this is a very simple answer, but I think that there is no shortcut here. It's something very important to do. And the second instead is a way more. I think technology comes in our help in this space. We could imagine tools or ideas to actually compile these solutions, to bring solution that be tested, discovered, and analyzed in different places of the planet, centralizes knowledge, and see if it can be applied at global level, regional level, local level, and we could learn a lot from each other and do it in a systematic way. But I think, this is just an idea. I think that much more should be done in this space as well, because humans, go, we all have a limited time. And so I think these are the two answers that I have. No, Colombia, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, on the second point, it's something we're actually working on at the moment. It's a vague idea, but we're working on finding a way to compile best practices from across the world so we can update you as this goes. And I also wanted to just mention, I think Philip, who's in this call, would be able to probably input on this, because once someone asked in one of our town halls, what about, hasn't this already been done? Haven't we already thought a lot about world federalism and what it would look like and so on? And I think Philip had an answer that was better than one I can articulate, about the fact that consultations from the ground up, including everyone, not just people who have a PhD in governance and have thought about this their entire life, actually has not really happened or has not managed to reach beyond the elites. And I'll let him complement on this, but for me, it's more, look, we're all convinced if we hear that world federalism is the way forward, we're all convinced that democracy is beautiful. And if I speak to any of my friends about this, they won't even stay until the end of the sentence. It sounds like the most boring sentence in the world to them. So I think there's something about managing to find new ways to have this conversation, talk about how relevant it is to everyone's lives, find a way to link it to our current crisis. World federalism is the answer to a lot of problems. I'm convinced about it on the long term. In the meantime, rent is going up and it's impossible for me to pay it. So how will this help me, right? Like finding a way. So the old solutions, what has already been thought of, should be incorporated. I agree. And I agree with what Andrea said, and there's no magic one to have a perfect solution. But we also need to find a way to make it relevant for people and for them to see how this is about them, for them, and how they will have a say over it, which I think is a bit that it's, at least from what I've read, is still missing. But Philip, if you want to input, I know you've thought about this as well in the past as part of Atlas. I don't mean to put you on the spot, sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. So hello, everyone. My name is Philippe Brunswick, and I'm French. I'm a former lawyer and an old-time, how should I say, ecological militant, if we say it like, okay? I had two topics, and you all, that I wanted to mention or speak about briefly. First of all, my first comment was dealing with the idea that democracies are in crisis right now and why they are in crisis. And I totally agree with what Colombe said previously, but I'm sensitive to another set of reasons for which democracy is in crisis. And that's, to me, and I would like to mention that, it's the incapacity, the impotence of politicians of the 21st century to answer the questions, the challenges, the needs of the citizens in the 21st century. And I believe that this will last as long as we have a nation state system of power, because nation states can't answer the real problems or the major problems that the citizens of the 21st century are facing. For instance, we all suffer from inequality in the world. It's rising. It's more and more unsatisfactory, unsupportable. But what can a nation state do? Nothing, because the people who are favoring inequality, they act worldwide, and you can't grasp that. You can't grasp inequality if you're not worldwide, if you cannot deal with these people on an equal to equal basis. And that's part of things to be that a global governance system should answer to, right? Another idea is, well, I don't know, climate change. We're all worried about that, but nation states cannot answer that, because then competition with each other, and only a global governance system will answer the climate change challenges. So I just wanted to point that out. The second topic I wanted to address is what we're trying to do. Okay, I'm one of the co-leads of the policy team in Atlas, and we are trying to animate the consultation that's going on right now. And I would just like to advocate the idea that all of you here listening to this and participating into this call would please participate and feed in the consultation. We have many, many very interesting topics to deal with. For instance, okay, we want global governance, but how do we work about it? Colombe was mentioning how do we have maybe a fourth branch of democracy and all that. So that's the first thing. How do we organize the democracy? But how do we organize elections? What should the institutions look like? What checks and balances do we want? What checks and balances do we need? Okay, so all this are the topics that are discussed in the consultation, and we really need your contributions in it. And one of the contributions that I would like you to really focus on is, what should the competencies of the global governance level should be? That's a very important thing. And I personally have a reserve on the idea that was mentioned before. That's why I wanted to mention here. It was said before that the global governance level should deal with a minimum wage or some sort of world solidarity. I'm not sure about it. I don't think so. I think, and the problem, or let's put it this way, I don't know if that should be the case or not, but what I think is what we should really think about and try to deepen is, what are the things that this global governance level should deal with? And to me, it should just deal with the topics that are first concerning the whole world, the citizens throughout the world first, and second, the topics that are best dealt with at the global level, okay? And for instance, climate, and for instance, I don't know, nuclear control, and for instance, fighting against inequality worldwide. But again, I think we should really try to dig into that and to me, a preservation of biodiversity. But really, if you were keen enough to contribute on that topics, it would be nice.
Thank you very much, Philippe. Something I'm, as I mentioned at the outset, I'm not as briefed on all of this as I'd like to be. I'd like to think your consultation is doing a lot of work on the how we get there and what the first steps are, as well as the end goal. Because defining a World Federalist end goal is comparatively straightforward, but deciding what we're going to do tomorrow to make progress on it is very hard indeed. Melina.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm here from Democracia Global from Argentina. The director executive Camila Lopez Badra wasn't available to be here, so I'm here taking notes. And one thing that made me think about everything, and make it quick, sorry, I know we have a tight schedule, was the event, co-hosting the event. I saw that you already sent an email, so I was very interesting, and Democracia Global is very interesting to make contact with you and maybe work on some conversation online through global governance and what it should be like, and a kind of project that we are managing right now. It's a series of 25 video lectures about global democracy and justice. It's in YouTube and social media, so we are really looking forward to trying to make an event and maybe co-host it.
Great. Sounds perfect, Melina. Please, yeah, I sent you an email, so if you get back to me, we can organize this.
Thank you very much. Jackie.
Hi, thank you very much for having this. Nice to see your face again, John. I believe you spoke for us at our Global Governance Hub maybe about a year ago. I'm the US coordinator for simple.org. And my question today to the organization is, one of the reasons to have global governance is to deal with those global issues, as Philippe was talking about, those issues that no one country can handle on their own. So my question is, how will you do that, not including non-democratic countries? So how will we be able to include non-democratic countries in issues that have to be dealt with by everyone in order to be effectively solved, like climate change, mass migration, wealth inequity, nuclear arms? There's a number of them. If somebody would like to answer that, I'd really love to hear it. Simple is an organization that talks about that a lot, and it's very near and dear to our heart, and we would like to have this discussion with other organizations. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. I think, so this is a PhD in itself, right? So I'll try to do it in 30 seconds. And when we talk about democratic global governance, for me, it doesn't mean that it's the only type of global governance out there. It doesn't have to be a monopoly of governance. You could perfectly still have organizations like the United Nations that deal with some issues that have to be also dealt with authoritarian countries like climate, when indeed you need to have China at the table, right? It's impossible to deal with it without China. That's just one example. And migration flows need to be dealt with some of the home countries that might be authoritarian and so on. But it doesn't mean that you still can't have a democratic global governance that is pushing forward democratic standards, giving incentives, just like the EU again, for other countries to join, is dealing, for example, with taxation in a unified manner, is creating a more federal world from a democratic perspective. I think both can coexist. That's my personal opinion. It's being debated as well during our consultations, but I think both can coexist at the same time. You still can have organizations, including countries that are authoritarian, while creating this governance that should be the model for the future based on principles that are more up to date. It would probably be a clash. It will be a huge mess regardless, but I think that's kind of the only way to kind of not give up on today's issues and move forward as well with democracy.
Thank you.
This is Philippe. I would like to add, if I may, to that, to your question, that to me, if we organize direct elections, they should not be, in my opinion, organized nationally. They should be organized globally, which means that when you're mentioning how do we do without China. Well, China is a national idea, right? And I think that people within China, subject to restrictions that we know, right, that are active there, but they should potentially participate not as Chinese, but as citizens of the world, and everybody should. And to me, has this capacity to participate in the future elections directly, without the filter, the national filter.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Thank you very much. So now you have a question from Jackie from Simpol to Atlas. That question is one that many people on this call have thought about deeply for many years, and there are many answers to the question. So we've heard Atlas's thoughts, but this is a topic on which there are very sophisticated and different answers, which I won't attempt to go into here. But there's a lot of resource to Atlas in considering that question. In the interest of time, so we need to start wrapping up fairly soon. I'm going to turn to Chris, please.
Thanks, John. My picture is wavering, so I'll probably have to turn it off in a second. I'm the president of the World Citizens Association of Australia, and I'm concerned, I suppose, with this question of how we get there. And I think Europe has set the example. So Jean Monnet and the founders of Europe said that Europe will not be built all at once or according to a single plan. I think the same is true of a world federation. We need to start with a smaller group and proceed stage by stage, treaty by treaty, to build up towards the final solution. That's my idea. Who should we start with? Well, democracy has to be a fundamental principle of any world federation. So the idea is we should start with democracies. And so we've founded a transnational working group called the Coalition for a World Security Community of Democratic Nations, based on that idea. Well, Andreas talked about the problem of Taiwan, and that, it seems to me, gives us a great opportunity, because there's a huge need for the major democracies of the world to get together to deter China from any adventure against Taiwan. And so, for instance, sorry, I'll turn myself off again. We could start, for instance, with a G7 plus a few Indo-Pacific powers like, well, Japan's already in it, Australia, South Korea, maybe India. And that's an opportunity right now. And we're working, doing what little we can to advance that idea. So, yeah, we're looking to form a global alliance of democracies, or if you prefer, well, we would prefer a community along the European model of mutual security. And that could be the starting point for our World Federation. All right, that's a very condensed version, but let me leave it there.
And so I would highly encourage you to share it on the consultations to see how people would react to this. I can tell you that personally, I believe in starting from the people, not from the countries. I also believe that nation states are a bit of an outdated concept often. So including more people from across the world, but it doesn't mean this will be the outcome of our consultations. And I believe that starting from a small group of countries is a bit exclusionary in its nature, which means that some countries might see it, some democratic countries might see it with a bit of a pinch of salt of, well, why aren't we included from the beginning? Why don't we have a say? Kind of like what is happening with the Summit of Democracies of Biden, right? Handpicking which countries have a right to be there, not those who don't have a right to be there, and so on, is raising a lot of questions amongst a lot of countries across the world on what are the standards? How come some countries are included in the summit, a community of democracies, and not others? And why should a few countries have a say over this in the first place? So I think those are just some of the questions. I think it's one of the ways forward, and it's one of the probably fastest ways forward to start from a small group of countries. And I'm not sure that it wouldn't replicate some of the issues that we have right now with nation states themselves at the national level, and with an unequal balance of power across the world that we see, for example, in the UN Security Council and so on.
Well, let me just add one comment. The idea is the community would be open to new members provided they satisfied reasonable standards of democracy, rather like Europe does at present.
But
Okay. I'm going to move on to Tad here, just in the interest of giving everyone a chance to speak. Tad.
Thank you, John Vlasto. Tad Daly, a longtime activist for Citizens for Global Solutions. First, a quick apology. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm coordinating this with my Saturday morning running club, trying to stay healthy. And I think you all caught me talking to my running buddies about why there was noise emanating from my pocket, that I was explaining what I was doing with all you guys. So apologies for that. Colombe and Andrea, this is a very exciting initiative. And those of us who've been engaged in these issues and this agitation for this vision for a long time are always delighted that new people sort of come to it independently. And, you know, that we want that to happen thousands of times. I have a very quick sort of it's a very small substantive point, but I just want to bring it to your attention. It is possible that I have misread or misheard some things, but sometimes it seems to me, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that you use the term governance and government interchangeably, and they're not interchangeable. Sometimes there is a system of global governance right now. It's centered around the very weak United Nations. Most of us have been campaigning for many years for the human community to work toward establishing a democratic federal world government that is not dissimilar from the governments that exist in 193 states around the world. You might sometimes want to talk about, we're having a debate about our structures of global governance, but in terms of the ultimate aspiration, I encourage you to really to distinguish between the system, the alternative systems of global governance that we have and that might be imagined, and that, at least in our case, the ultimate aspiration of a democratic federal world government. So thanks so much, and we're delighted that you guys are doing this initiative.
So Atlas, if I may, can I ask you to wrap up in 1 to 2 minutes?
Okay, so thank you so much for all of the ideas. I think already here, and I'll echo what Philip has said, there's been a lot of new ideas, from starting from the G7 and expanding to direct democracy at the global level, to starting with a Bill of Rights, so a constitution and so on. I see a debate in the chat as well. Clearly, you all have a lot of ideas. So please take 5 minutes and input into the consultations and try to see what people that are not our members and not necessarily World Federalists at the very beginning. It's an idea they've come to after a couple of years, and how they feel about it, what some of the urgent issues they think a world governance and governments, because I don't think there's a democratic world government, should be dealing with. And let's debate it and come to a conclusion. I think we all agree on the long-term aim of seeing a more federalist democratic world. And there's a lot of potential strategies. So it's always great to exchange and try to find a way to make it happen. So thank you so much for attending. I hope you have a wonderful run, Tad, in LA, and that everyone else has a wonderful Saturday.
Thank you very much. Just to wrap up in 1 minute from WFM's perspective, this is a first event of this type in 2 senses. One is it's obviously a big introduction of Atlas to all of the wider movement here. And that is the start of a process. This isn't a one-off. Obviously, Atlas is going to be working with us, and please reach out to them and offer help in your country, etc., etc. So just the start. And likewise, in terms of our other associate member organizations who are on this call, this is Atlas presenting to us, but this is, again, the first of a number of events we would like to hold where our members and associates can present to the wider movement, and we can just start integrating better what we're doing. So thank you all very much. Thank you particularly to Atlas for youth and energy and something new. And you are so, so welcome. And let us do everything we can to help you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having us, and have a great day. Bye.